Good evening, everyone. I'm Riley King, and welcome to this Tuesday evening edition of Politics with Riley King. Let's begin. First up, Mesma says he has skills to reach White House. Florida mayor answers questions from New Hampshire voters for the next installment of Conversation with the Candidate on WMUR News 9. It will air on Thursday evening at 7 p.m. Democratic presidential candidate Wayne Mesma told New Hampshire voters Tuesday that he has a skill set that would be valuable in the White House. New Jersey State Senate leader to headline Booker office opening in Nashua. The first surrogate for a presidential candidate to visit New Hampshire will arrive on Wednesday in supporting of Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey. Therese Razou, the Senate President pro tempore of the New Jersey Senate, will appear at an official opening of Booker's Nashua campaign office, 83 West Pearl Street at 6:15 p.m. Tagging data shows bear spared by governor traveled thousands of miles. Governor stands by decision to relocate bear. A bear whose life was spared 2 years ago by New Hampshire's governor has returned to her home turf near Dartmouth College after traveling thousands of miles since her relocation last June. The State and Fish and Game Department had decided to euthanize the female black bear and 3 of her young offsprings in 2017 after repeated problems with them feeding from trash and bird feeders accumulated, with 2 bears entering a home in Hanover. But a public outcry, Republican Governor Chris Sununu ordered the animals relocated instead. The 3 younglings were moved that year, and one of them was killed by a hunter in Quebec, Canada, within a few weeks. The mother bear, dubbed Mink by locals, left town to mate and wasn't captured until last year after she returned with 4 new cubs last spring. She was tagged, fitted with a tracking collar, and moved about 120 miles north to a sparsely populated location near the Canadian border. But last week, Mink made it back to Hanover after traveling a loop route through New Hampshire and Vermont. Andrew Timmons, the Bear Project leader with the New Hampshire Fish and Game Department, said Monday that he's been in regular contact with the governor's office and a local bear rehabilitator, and all agreed there's no need to take further action at this time. Officials favoring euthanization had argued the animals were no longer afraid of humans, would likely find new neighborhoods to frequent if moved, or would eventually find their way back to Hanover. According to her tracking collar, data, Mink spent the winter in a den in Beaufort, Vermont. She was back on the move by April, crossing the Connecticut River to get back to New Hampshire less than 2 weeks ago. Authorities have gotten a few calls about the bear in the last year, and none reporting any trouble. Timmons said, as the mink currently has no cubs, it's possible she may spend more time away from downtown Hanover in search of a mate. Sununu isn't the first governor to get involved in wildlife issues. In 2011, then Montana Governor Brian Schultz signed an executive order to temporarily block the impending slaughter of hundreds of Yellowstone National Park bisons. Votes falling into place to override Sununu veto of death penalty repeal. Some GOP support for repeal slipping. All eyes will be on the Senate House later this week, as reps are expected to vote to override the governor's veto of a bill to end capital punishment in New Hampshire. When the House voted to repeal the death penalty in March, it did so with a 279 to 88 bipartisan majority, clearing the 2/3 threshold needed to override a veto. In a statement to WMUR, Chris Sununu said this. Take a look. And here is that statement. That message is shrinking in with some House Republicans who are reconsidering the votes they cast in favor of repeal. Abraham said there are intense behind-the-scene lobbying efforts on this bill. He said, at least among Republicans, the governor and House leaders have been convincing, while the other side has come off as heavy-handed. How many will follow him remains to be seen. The vote will be held later this week. U.S. military jets intercepted Russia bombers and fighter jets off Alaska. U.S. Air Force F-22 fighter intercepted 6 Russian aircrafts that entered the Alaskan Air Defense Identification Zone on Monday. The Russian aircrafts remained in the international airspace and never entered the U.S. airspace, but it's the first time since last September that Russia aircrafts have flown this close to Alaska. And that does it for this edition of Politics with Riley King. I hope you all enjoyed this edition of Politics with Riley King. I'll see you back here tomorrow night for another edition of Politics with Riley King. Have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday evening. Good night, everyone. Bye.